Hey there, it's Chris from Good Roads, and I bring tidings of great joy. The snowboard works! So, let's take a look at the steps that I took to finish it up after taking it out of the mold, and then we can take it to the mountains for a test drive. The first thing I needed to do was to trim the flashing and get the board down to its final profile, and I'm doing this using my oscillating belt sander. On the sides of the board, this was a pretty easy task. The metal edges work as a real tactile template for sanding. However, on the nose and tail, I could easily sand through the materials and mess up the shape, so I flipped over the board and used the P-Tex base as a guideline. Let's take a look at how the base came out. When I pressed the board, the molds flexed a bit, which left the base with this edge-to-edge cup. Also, I really did miss those two binding inserts that I was trying to use for alignment, and as you can see here, that resulted in two little bulges in the base. I'm pretty sure that means this board wouldn't survive a real, proper base grind, but I think I can get close with the tools I have, so the first thing I did was to use a microplane to remove bulk material and start to level out the bigger, uneven, bumpy areas of the base. Another thing that a normal base grind would do is remove any resin left on the base from the layup. I started roughing out the grind using a hand belt sander with a low grit belt, but I ended up having more luck with a random orbital sander. I stepped up through the grits to 220, and I think I actually got a pretty good result given what I was working with. The base still has a bit of a cup to it, but it's much more flat and even. I mentioned in the last video that there were a couple places where my veneer top sheet bubbled, and I need to address that before I move on to the next step. I used a razor to cut through the top sheet to allow me to get glue down into the void, and then I used a sliver of wood to spread glue between the veneer and the rest of the board. Then I laid down some paper towel and a block of wood and clamped my repair down to cure. The block of wood is there to distribute the clamping force, and the paper is there so I don't glue the block of wood to the board. I gave it a day to dry up, removed the clamps, and hey, that looks like it worked out pretty well. With that done, I can safely sand the top sheet, and I remembered that I had this! This sanding sleeve probably would have done a really good job on the base as well, and it made quick work of rough sanding my veneer. Then it was back to the palm sander to remove epoxy and step up through the grits. The next step I need to tackle is chamfering the sides of the snowboard, and to do that I'm using this. This is a 3D printed base for my palm router that has an 8-degree wedge. Together with a flush cut bit, I should be able to use the metal edges as a routing template and get a really even, clean chamfer. If you want to print a wedged router base of your own, I have the files on my website. There's a version without any mounting holes in it that you should be able to modify to fit any number of routers. Check out the link in the description if you're interested. Ah yeah, that's looking great. Next, I've got to drill out my binding inserts. I used a strong, small magnet to get a general location of where the inserts were. Then I marked and drilled 2 of them. And then I used those 2 inserts as registration to use this printed guide to drill the rest accurately. Then I used this die grinder bit to chamfer the holes for a nice clean finish. I should probably get myself some actual chamfering bits, but this worked out really well too. One final sanding at 220 grit, and all that's left is the finish. I'm using spar urethane, which is more UV resistant, less brittle, and less temperature sensitive than polyurethane, so hopefully it'll work out for me here. I chose a satin finish because I don't want the gloss of the finish to detract from the grain of the wood. And speaking of the wood, look at that! I knew there was a reason walnut is my favorite wood to work with. That green is absolutely gorgeous. And with that, the build is basically done. All I have to do now is scrape off any excess finish, and then it's time for a pre-ride tune-up. So let's get this thing ready to ride and take it to the mountain. works. It works. It's a snowboard. Y'all, it works. I did it. I built a snowboard and it's a really fun board. It's whippy and you can lean into the back seat and swinging the nose around feels super surfy. I'm a pretty inexperienced glades rider, but it feels really agile in the trees. I didn't shoot that riding footage at my local mountain, so I wasn't able to find much powder, but it definitely floats. And I know where I can find some serious pockets of the deep stuff over the weekend, so if you're watching this video on the day it goes out, there's a good chance I'm out there right now hunting powder and putting it through its paces. Is it perfect? No. Did I make some mistakes? Yes. Does it have some accidental arbor-style uprise fenders? Yes. Is it a snowboard? Hell yes, it is a snowboard. And that is the coolest unexpected feeling I have coming out of this project. A week ago, I had one snowboard, and now I have two. This whole time, this object has just been a thing that I'm working really hard on. And now that thing is gone, and in its place, there's a snowboard. And my quiver is bigger. What an amazing feeling. Well, I guess I'm done. Where do we go from here? I've got to give a huge shout out to my supporters over on Patreon. Thank you guys so much for your help getting over that line so I could afford the materials for the rebuild. I could not have done this without your help. If you guys like the content I produce here on the channel and would want to jump in and support, it is so very appreciated. There's a link down in the description. Coming up, we're going to be tackling some projects that aren't 14 videos long and are still really cool DIY board sport related projects. So subscribe and make sure that you don't miss any of that because it's going to be great. If you've got comments, questions, declarations, pontifications, leave them down below. And with that, thank you so much for coming along on this journey with me. All of your advice, your questions, and your support over the course of this build have truly been amazing. I've loved having you along for the ride, so until the next one, I'll see you soon. Thank you so... Feels really good, guys. Whew. Oh, I wasn't expecting that. Emotions. All right, let's try this again. Whew. Thank you guys so much.